Here's a fact about you that doesn't feel true. You are a tropical animal. Your body was shaped, down to the cell, for a warm African climate, and almost nothing about it was built for the cold. Look at the evidence on your own skin. You have almost no fur. You're covered in millions of sweat glands, all designed to dump heat. Your arms and legs are long and thin, great for staying cool, terrible for staying warm. By the blueprint, you belong somewhere hot. Now drop that body where it absolutely does not belong. It's 20,000 years ago, the depth of the last ice age. You're standing on a frozen plain in what is now Europe. The wind is far below freezing. There are no trees. The ground is hard as iron. Look around at the locals. The wolf has a thick coat. The mammoth has fur and a layer of fat as thick as your fist. The bear has both, plus a cave. And you? You have bare, naked skin and a body still trying to sweat in a place that wants to freeze you solid. By every rule of biology, a hairless, sweating, heat-loving ape should not last one night out here. It should be dead by morning. And yet, here's the strange part. Your ancestors didn't just scrape through the ice age. They walked straight into it, and they stayed. They moved into the freezer. They raised children on the ice. A naked tropical animal colonized some of the most lethal cold on Earth, and won. The only question that matters is how. How do you survive a world your body was never built for? The answer was never a tougher body. It was everything a body could never do on its own. A way to carry summer with you. A fur we had to build for ourselves. Houses raised from the dead. And a refusal to ever face the winter alone. But before any of that, we have to start with the body itself, and the handful of desperate little tricks hidden in your blood that, even today, come nowhere close to enough. To understand the trick, you first have to understand just how badly your body handles cold, and it begins with something we gave up a very long time ago: our fur. Genetic studies suggest our ancestors lost most of their body hair around 1 million years ago, back in hot Africa, where being nearly naked was an advantage. It let us sweat and run and hunt under a brutal sun without overheating. We became the sweatiest, baldest ape on the savannah, and for that world, it was genius. But every feature that helps you lose heat becomes a liability when you need to keep it. Those millions of sweat glands? In the cold, sweat turns dangerous. Wet skin loses heat fast, and in an ice age, getting wet could kill you. Our long limbs, perfect for radiating warmth away, now bled it straight into the freezing air. The tropical body isn't just unprepared for the cold, it is actively built to do the wrong thing. Now, it's not like we have zero defenses. Evolution did hand us a few emergency tricks. They're just nowhere near enough alone. The first one you know well: shivering. That's your muscles firing uselessly, on purpose, purely to generate heat. It works. It also burns through your energy alarmingly fast. The second trick is sneakier. Babies, and some adults, carry a special tissue called brown fat, whose entire job is to burn itself to make heat, like a tiny internal furnace. It's part of how a small body holds warmth it otherwise couldn't. And the third is almost spooky. Out in the cold, the blood vessels in your fingers clamp shut to save heat, and then, every few minutes, they suddenly throw open and flood your fingertips with warm blood, before clamping down again. It's called the hunting response, your body quietly fighting to keep your fingers from freezing off while you work. These are real adaptations, but be honest about what they actually buy you. Minutes, maybe hours. Shivering, brown fat, and warm fingers do not get a naked human through a single ice age night, let alone a winter that lasts half the year. The body, left to itself, loses. So our ancestors stopped relying on the body and started building their way out, beginning with the single most important invention in human history: fire. We don't know the exact moment humans first tamed it, but by at least several 100,000 years ago, our ancestors were using it regularly, and some contested evidence may push the first controlled flames back close to 1,000,000 years. However it began, fire rewrote the rules of cold completely. Think about what a fire really is to a freezing animal. It's a piece of summer you can carry, a patch of the warm world lit on demand in the middle of the ice. For the first time, an animal could bring its own climate with it instead of being trapped in whatever the sky decided to do. The hearth became the center of everything. People didn't just warm their hands at it, they slept around it in a ring, bodies and flames together, sharing heat through the night. In the world's oldest group, the fire was the one member who was never, ever allowed to fall asleep, because that was the catch. A fire left alone dies, so someone always had to keep it. Through the long dark, people took turns feeding the flames and watching the black beyond them, part heating system, part alarm system. The same fire that warmed the camp also pinned the wolves and big cats at the very edge of the light. And fire did one more thing, less obvious but just as vital. It cooked. Cooked food releases far more of its energy than raw, and energy is exactly what a cold body runs on. Staying warm burns a staggering number of calories. So fire didn't only heat the air around you, it loaded your body with the fuel to make heat from the inside. Fire was warmth, safety, light, and fuel all at once. There was just one problem with it. A fire stays where you build it, and you cannot hug a campfire while you're a mile out on the open steppe chasing a mammoth through the snow. For that, you needed warmth you could wear. We couldn't grow fur, so we did the next best thing. We took it from the animals that already had it. And the story of how is one of the great quiet revolutions of our species. Here's the problem for archaeologists. Clothing rots. Animal hides don't survive tens of thousands of years, so we can't just dig up the first coat. For a long time, nobody could say when humans started dressing. And then someone found the answer in the most disgusting place imaginable: lice. It turns out humans carry two kinds of lice: head lice and body lice that live specifically in clothing. Clothing lice simply could not exist before clothing did. So scientists, led by researcher David Reed, measured how long ago the two kinds split apart genetically. The answer came back somewhere around 170,000 years ago. We dated the invention of clothes using the parasites that live inside them, and that is far older than our push into the frozen north, which means we invented clothing back in Africa long before we needed it for cold, then carried that invention into places where it suddenly became the difference between life and death. The naked ape walked into the Ice Age already wearing its first rough answer to it. But a hide thrown over your shoulders is not the same as a fitted coat. The real leap was tailoring, clothing cut and sewn to seal tight around the body and trap a layer of warm air. For that, you need tools. Bone awls for punching holes show up perhaps 80,000 years ago. And then the masterpiece, the eyed needle, the oldest known examples around 40 to 50,000 years old, including one from a Siberian cave that may not even have been made by our own species. With needles, humans could sew fine, layered, fitted clothing, an inner layer, an outer layer, sealed seams. We had effectively learned to manufacture our own fur, arguably better than the kind we'd thrown away 1,000,000 years before. And they didn't just make it warm, they made it spectacular. At a site called Sungir in what is now Russia, People from around 30,000 years ago were buried in clothing sewn with thousands of tiny, carved ivory beads, over 13,000 of them in a single group of graves, each bead perhaps an hour to make. That's something like 10,000 hours of work stitched onto outfits in the depths of the Ice Age. The archaeologist Ian Gilligan argues that fitted clothing was so crucial it may have shaped where and when humans could spread across the planet at all. And there's a haunting possibility tucked inside those needles. We shared the Ice Age with another kind of human, the Neanderthals, whose bodies were far better cold adapted than ours, stockier, more compact, built to hold heat. And yet their toolkits show fewer of these specialized clothing tools. Some researchers wonder whether one thin edge that helped our fragile species outlast the sturdier Neanderthals was simply that we sewed better clothes. It's only one idea among several, and nobody knows for certain. But it's a strange thought that the warmest thing in the Ice Age might not have been a thick body. It was a good needle. Of course, a coat only takes you so far once the sun goes down. You also needed somewhere to survive the night. The first and best shelter was the one you didn't have to build, a cave. A deep cave holds a steady temperature, blocks the wind, and has a back wall no predator can sneak around. Good caves were prime real estate, exactly the kind of thing groups almost certainly fought and competed over. But caves don't move, and the food did. So people also built shelter they could carry or rebuild. Frames of wood or bone draped in stitched hides, the Ice Age tent, raised wherever the herds led them. Home became a thing you could pack onto your back, and in some places there was no wood at all, just frozen, treeless plain. So humans built houses out of the only large, sturdy material around, the dead. At a site called Mezherich in modern Ukraine, archaeologists found dwellings made from the bones and tusks of mammoths, hundreds of bones in a single structure. Recent dating puts the largest of these bone houses at around 18,000 years old, built just after the coldest peak of the entire Ice Age. Picture that, on a frozen plain with no trees in the harshest cold our species has ever faced, people raised round shelters from the skeletons of giants and lived inside them. It is, comfortably, the most metal house in human history, and it was, essentially, a survival cabin. Then there was food, and winter was the season that actively tried to starve you. Plants vanish under the snow, so the cold weather diet leaned hard on fat and meat, the densest fuel available. To a freezing body, fat wasn't an indulgence, it was survival, burned straight into heat. They hunted the giants, mammoth, bison, horse, reindeer, and a single mammoth was almost an entire survival kit on its own. Meat to eat, fat to burn for warmth, and even for light in simple stone lamps, hide for clothing and tents, sinew for thread, and bones and tusks for tools, needles, and whole houses. One animal could supply nearly everything a group needed to outlast a winter. And when a kill was too big to finish, the Ice Age handed them a free appliance, the frozen ground itself. Meat buried in permafrost or packed in snow simply kept. So the same brutal cold that was trying to kill them doubled for free as the world's first refrigerator. But notice what every single one of these tricks has in common. Keeping a fire alive all night, bringing down a mammoth, scraping and stitching dozens of hides into fitted clothes, hauling giant bones into a house. Not one of them is something a lone human can do. This is the real secret, the one underneath all the others. The technology that beat the Ice Age wasn't fire or needles or even the houses of bone. It was cooperation. A single human on that frozen plain freezes and starves. A group, sharing food, heat, work, and the night watch, survives. We didn't out-tough the cold. We out-organized it. And even then, altogether, the price was staggering. Because it would be a lie to wrap this in a cozy glow. For all the cleverness, winter was still a culling. When the food ran low and the cold dug in, people starved and froze. And the first to go were almost always the very young and the very old, the ones who couldn't hold their own heat or carry their own weight. For most of this story, surviving a winter was not guaranteed for anyone. Burying someone before spring wasn't a rare catastrophe. It was a grim, expected part of the year. All the fire and fur and cooperation did not cancel that death. It just meant enough people lived to try again next winter. The ingenuity was real, so was the cost. Both are true at once. And there's a humbling twist in it. The Neanderthals, the cold-adapted humans with the better bodies for this, survived ice ages for hundreds of thousands of years, and then vanished around 40,000 years ago. We don't fully know why. The climate was lurching violently. There was competition. The two species even interbred, so a little of them still lives on in many of us today. They were not stupid brutes. They were skilled, capable people, built for the cold better than we were, which makes the lesson sharper, not softer. Because if the human with the warmer body is the one who disappeared, then the thing that carried us through was never really biology at all. We didn't survive the Ice Age by being the toughest animal on the ice. We survived it by being the one animal that flatly refused to depend on its own body. And that is the answer to the whole paradox. A tropical, sweating, furless ape conquered the coldest places on Earth, not by growing fur or thick blood or a furnace in its chest, but by inventing fur, by carrying fire, by raising homes from giants, and by never, ever facing the winter alone. We didn't change our bodies to fit the cold world. We changed the world to fit our warm, tropical bodies. Which brings us back to you. Right now, you are still that exact same tropical animal. You haven't grown a single hair of fur. Your body is, cell for cell, still built for a warm African afternoon. And yet, here you might be, in the dead of winter, in a place your ancestors could only survive with everything they had, mildly annoyed that the room is a little chilly. Look around the warm room you're probably sitting in. The heater humming in the wall is the campfire. The coat by the door is the sewn hide. The freezer in the kitchen is the permafrost. The walls holding back the wind are the cave and the house of bones. We never stopped using the same 4 tricks. We just made them so good and so quiet that we forgot they were ever about survival at all. Every warm winter you have ever lived through was a gift. It was handed to you by 100,000 years of people standing out on the ice, with the wrong body for the job, refusing to freeze. Keeping the fire lit, threading the needle, dragging the bones, taking the night watch so the children would still be breathing at dawn. So you are not really a creature that beat the cold. You're a tropical animal that learned to carry a little piece of summer wherever it goes, in a coat, in a wall, in a flame, in a circle of people who agreed to keep each other alive. That borrowed warmth is the oldest human magic there is. So the next time the cold bites and you reach for a coat or turn up the heat or just move a little closer to someone warm, notice it. That small, automatic gesture is the very same one that carried a naked, shivering, stubborn ape all the way through an ice age and straight into a heated room 20,000 years later. New episode every week. Subscribe so you don't miss it.